All right, welcome everyone. Today, we're going to look at the universe from a totally different angle. Instead of diving right into forces and particles, we're going to take a huge step back and ask something much more basic. What are the absolute, non-negotiable rules that reality has to follow just to exist?
Okay, so let's get right into it. In physics, when our equations spit out the answer infinity, we kind of just shrug and treat it as this weird, but maybe real, feature of the cosmos. But what if it's not a feature at all? What if infinity is basically a giant stop sign, telling us our theory has just crashed? And look, let's be absolutely clear. Theories like general relativity and quantum mechanics, they're monumental achievements. They're the reason your GPS works. They paint this incredible picture of our universe. But when you push them to their absolute breaking point, the answers they give start to look less like deep cosmic truths and more like an error message popping up on reality's screen.
So this is where you can really see the problem. Our best math predicts stuff like infinite density inside a black hole, or a universe that just ends in a singularity. And for decades, the standard answer has been, the theory just breaks down there. But this framework we're talking about, TRU, it flips that whole idea on its head. It asks, what if the universe can't break? If that's true, then when our theory predicts a breakdown, it's not describing reality. It's just describing its own limitations.
And that brings us to a really fundamental shift in thinking. It's about moving from asking how the universe works to asking why it can work at all. We're not just looking at the mechanics anymore. We're trying to figure out the absolute foundational rules that make existence even possible.
So, here's the absolute core of it. The big question shifts from what are the laws of our specific universe to something much bigger. What rules must be true for any universe to exist and not just immediately fall apart? It sounds like a small change in wording, but believe me, it changes absolutely everything.
There's a really great analogy for this. Imagine you're building a bridge. You can argue all day about the engineering, the cables, the design, but before any of that, the bridge has to obey some basic rules, right? It can't require materials with infinite strength. It has to be possible in the real world first. Well, this framework applies that same exact logic to the entire universe.
Now, this is a super important point. This true idea isn't trying to replace general relativity or anything like that. It's not some new force we've discovered. It's more like the rule book for the game of physics. It sets the boundaries and the non-negotiable rules before the game, with all its players, like gravity and quantum mechanics, even begins.
Okay, so what are these big non-negotiable rules? Well, the whole framework is built on just 3 core constraints, and when you put them together, they have massive implications for some of the biggest ideas in cosmology, like black holes and the Big Bang.
All right, rule number 1, no realized physical infinities. Simple as that. Look, infinity is a great tool in math class, but the argument here is that it can't be a real thing in nature. You just can't have a point with actual infinite density or infinite curvature. It's physically off limits.
And you might ask, why not? Well, because infinity isn't just a really, really big number. It's a breakdown of logic itself. It's a state the universe literally can't respond to. It's unmanageable. So if our equations are pointing toward infinity, this framework says that's not the final answer. It's a warning sign that the universe has to do something else to avoid hitting that dead end.
Okay, on to the second constraint. Causality has to stay coherent, globally coherent. What that means is the overall order of cause and effect in the universe can't be destroyed. The basic storyline has to make sense.
Yeah, things can get super weird on the small scale. Hello, quantum mechanics. Particles being in 2 places at once? That's fine. That's local weirdness. But what can't happen, according to this rule, is for the entire universe to unravel its own timeline. The universe as a whole can't just throw its own history into a blender.
And that brings us to rule number 3, which sounds a bit technical, but it's really simple. Reaction capacity can't be exhausted. All this means is that the universe must always have the ability to respond to something happening. It can never get stuck in a state where the next moment just can't happen.
Think about a star collapsing under its own gravity. This rule says that process can't just use up all the universe's ability to react, leaving it frozen in some final terminal state. For reality to keep on, being reality, there always has to be a path forward. The next moment has to be possible.
Okay, so what happens when you take these 3 rules, no infinities, coherent causality, and always having a capacity to react, and put them all together? Well, you get this huge, game-changing consequence. It's like a built-in seatbelt for reality, and it makes one of the most famous concepts in all of physics
completely impossible.
And here's the punchline. Terminal singularities can't exist, period. Not because physicists don't like them, but because they break all three of our fundamental rules. A singularity is a realized infinity, it's a potential breakdown of cause and effect, and it's a state where the universe has run out of options. It's a logical contradiction in physical form.
So, if the universe can't break itself, what actually stops it? Well, there's a name for this built-in resistance, the Nexum Tendon. Now, this isn't some new force field. Think of it as a fundamental property of reality. It just means that as you push a system closer and closer to a breaking point, like crushing matter in a black hole, the cost of pushing it any further has to go up. Reality itself pushes back.
And I just love this quote that describes it. It is the seatbelt of emergence. That's perfect, right? It's the safety feature that clicks in when things get crazy, ensuring that reality doesn't just smash into a wall. Instead, it gets restrained and something new has to happen.
All right, let's circle back to another crucial point here. We have to remember, this whole thing is a framework, not a force. It's not about throwing out our existing physics. It's about figuring out where proven theories like general relativity fit into a bigger, more fundamental logical picture.
You know, this true framework doesn't replace general relativity, any more than the rules of chess replace a grandmaster's strategy. It sits upstream of all that. It's the thing that defines the size of the board and how the pieces can move before a single game is ever played.
And you can see that hierarchy right here. Step 1, you have the foundational constraints. That's the rulebook. Then, and only then, do you get step 2, the physical dynamics emerge. General relativity, quantum mechanics, all that good stuff. And step 3, that's our universe, the result of those dynamics playing out inside those unbreakable rules.
So what this all gives us is a really powerful logical filter. It means if any theory, no matter how amazing it is, ends up predicting an infinite density or a total collapse, this framework tells us that theory isn't describing what really happens. It's just describing the exact point where its own math runs out of road. So what's the big takeaway? What does any of this matter? Well, for starters, it paints a picture of a universe that's coherent and tough, not some fragile thing that's always about to break. It pushes back against these ideas of one-shot universes that just fail. And maybe most importantly, it gives us back this gut feeling that reality is self-consistent, that it makes sense, even if our equations can't always keep up. And let's end with this one final, really powerful idea. This way of thinking suggests that the simple, stubborn fact that the universe is still here, that it persists, is what creates its deepest rules. The structure isn't there because of some fancy equation. The structure is there because, for a reality to last, breaking the rules simply isn't an option. And that, well, that's a whole new way of looking at everything.